in this crisis?
It being 2 p.m, we'll move to questions without notice, and I would like some guidance as to who has the first question. Senator Pratt.
Mr President, my question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Payne. Minister Sukkar justified providing stimulus for jobs in the male-dominated housing industry while providing none for jobs in female-dominated industries by saying, yes, it is dominated by men, and in many cases those people will be supporting families. Does the minister endorse his comments?
The Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Very much, Mr President. I actually didn't hear all of Senator Pratt's question, the observation I would make in relation to the part that I did hear.
Sorry, Senator. Order. Point of order. Sorry.
No, I'm not actually complaining. I'm actually suggesting could we restart the clock and we'll have the question again, because the minister should hear the question before
with
she
the
answers.
leave of the Senate. Sorry,
thank you.
I'm happy to let the question be asked again. Senator Pratt.
Thank you. To Senator Payne, Minister Sukkar justified providing stimulus for jobs in the male-dominated housing industry whilst providing none for female-dominated industries by saying, yes, it is dominated.
Order, Senator Henderson.
Yes, it is dominated by men, and in many cases those people will be supporting families. Does the minister endorse his comments?
Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I am glad that Senator Pratt put that question again. As I understand it, Minister Sukkar is the Minister for Housing, and so therefore I would expect him to talk about the housing industry and the construction industry as it relates to his portfolio, as it absolutely relates to his portfolio. And so I didn't hear his direct comments, but if Minister Sukkar is speaking about his portfolio, then obviously that's what I would expect him to do. But I do want to refer you to another speech, Mr President, which will be remarkably inconvenient for those opposite, but nevertheless, the Prime Minister in his CEDA speech, for example, earlier this week, has been absolutely clear in saying that we know there is a disproportionate impact on women, and goes on to speak also about younger Australians and those with lower skills and a range of other people with challenges in the workforce which identify key parts of the labour force, key parts of the Australian community we need to focus on as we prepare and plan our way out and make our way out. We need to focus on. That is the words of the Prime Minister of Australia, Mr President, in relation to these issues.
Senator Cormann on a point of order. Is it the obvious one about noise, Senator Cormann?
Point of order. Interjections are disorderly. The most persistent interjector always is the Leader of the Opposition, and I would ask her to call it to order.
Senator, I was calling the chamber to order. Minister is correct. Interjections are always disorderly. Senator Payne to continue.
Thank you very much, Mr President. The Prime Minister went on in his CEDA speech to make a number of other points, including the work that JobKeeper and JobSeeker has done to put a floor under the fall in consumer confidence, which we saw in March, and we have now recovered.
Order.
We have now recovered that lost ground in consumer confidence, and both the Westpac and the ANZ indices tell us that. The high-frequency spending data shows that that's being increasingly translated into increased retail sales. Those opposite mention work areas which have a high proportion of women working in them. That includes hospitality and retail, and we know that the good news for those women and for young people who work in both of those areas, for example, that they will be early benefiters from the reopening process.
Has expired. Senator Payne, time for the answer has expired. Senator Pratt, a supplementary question.
Thank you. Yesterday the ABS released data which showed that since March, women lost payroll jobs at 1.3 times the rate of men. Modelling from the Bankwest Curtin Economics Centre found that the majority of the casuals excluded from JobKeeper are women, including more than 200,000 women in retail and fast food alone. Why did the government design a scheme that leaves women behind during Australia's first recession in 29 years?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I absolutely reject the premise of Senator Pratt's question. I absolutely reject the premise of Senator Pratt's
Senator
question.
Wong,
And in fact,
Senator Payne, I have Senator Cormann on a point of order.
Senator Wong doesn't even try to comply with standing orders. Interjections are disorderly. Please call it to order.
I was doing so at that point, and I'm going to reinstate my request that senators who are called to order at least count to 10 before they commence breaching standing orders again. Senator Payne, to continue.
Thank you very much, Mr President. As I said, I absolutely reject the premise of Senator Pratt's question. And what has been made clear by ministers, what has been made clear by the Treasurer, what has been made clear by the Finance Minister, by the Prime Minister and by me, is that we absolutely recognise it is critical that in the recovery process we draw on the capabilities of the entire nation. Men, women, men, to ensure the fastest possible economic and social recovery.
Senator Pratt, a final supplementary question.
Yesterday, Minister Ley said in the other place, women have been hardest hit through COVID-19. So why, in the last 2 weeks alone, has the government left women further behind by snapping back to unaffordable childcare, dudding aged care workers, taking from childcare workers and refusing paid parental leave from people who are expecting to be eligible?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. It seems to me that those opposite would prefer to have seen the childcare sector collapse upon itself. It seems to me that they would have preferred that a government didn't take advice from a sector about how best to sustain it in the middle of a pandemic, because, quite frankly, you don't even have the basic skills.
Order. Order. I will call the minister to continue when there's silence. I didn't. The Leader of the Government was interjecting. Order. Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Prior to COVID-19—
Order. Senator Cormann on a
Senator
point of
Wong
order.
continues to defy your order. Interjections are disorderly.
Senator Wong on a point of order.
He's very sensitive today. I actually said across the table for him that, you know, if he was going to play this game, we would make the point that he was interjecting on his own minister. I'm not sure that that's an interjection.
Senator
it's a
Wong.
private conversation with the Leader of the Government.
I'm not going to. I don't want to get to the point where what I might broadly describe as conversation across the centre table I deem as interjections. However, there have been interjections, Senator Wong, and I have called you to order previously. Senator Payne, to continue.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I'll do my best. Prior to COVID-19, there were more women in the workforce in Australia than ever before. The gender pay gap had closed to its lowest level on record at 13.9%. When Labor was last in office, it was 17.4%, Mr President. And our ambition as a government is to return to those numbers and grow them and enhance them. That is the approach that we will be taking. We absolutely know that we must draw upon every woman and every man in this country in the recovery process to ensure the fastest possible economic and social recovery.
Senator Payne. Senator Abetz.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Trade, Tourism, Investment, Senator Birmingham. Can the minister update the Senate on the progress towards the exciting prospect of a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom?
The Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. I thank Senator Abetz for his question and his interest in this very important topic, because I'm pleased to inform the Senate that later today Australia and the United Kingdom will officially commence negotiations towards a free trade agreement between our two countries. This is a great step forward in terms of creating new opportunity that will lead to new and further job opportunities for Australians. The UK is already our 7th largest trading partner, and our total two-way trade is worth more than $30 billion a year. But we can do much more than that. We are seeking an ambitious and comprehensive free trade agreement which secures commercially meaningful market access for our farmers, for our businesses, across services sectors as well as goods, and further strengthens our two-way investment flows. The UK is Australia's 3rd largest services trading partner. In 2019, our two-way services trade was worth in excess of $15 billion. And we want to make sure that across financial services, professional services, telecommunications, fintech and emerging sectors, we enhance and strengthen those opportunities. The UK is already our 2nd largest source of foreign investment in Australia, with foreign direct investment valued at some $127 billion in 2019. And we see exciting investments such as by British-based pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca in their $200 million manufacturing facility in North Ryde in Sydney. But we do know that when the UK entered the European Economic Community back in 1973, our agricultural exports suffered the worst. We were, at that stage, the UK was our third largest goods trading partner. It's now only our 12th. And tariffs on agricultural products account for 67% of all tariffs that the UK applies to Australian exports. We seek to eliminate as many of these as possible to create new opportunities for our farmers and our businesses to grow more jobs through this relationship.
Senator Abetz, a supplementary question.
I thank the minister for that very informative answer and ask, can the minister inform the Senate how a United Kingdom free trade agreement will create more jobs for Australians?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, 1 in 5 Australian jobs is dependent upon trade-related employment. Whether it's across Senator Abetz's home state of Tasmania, mine of South Australia or any other part of our great country, there are so many Australians who rely upon trade and market access to sustain their employment and their jobs. It's estimated that through our trade growth over recent years, more than 240,000 trade-related jobs have been created across Australia. And despite the challenges of the pandemic, we have seen trade volumes hold up very strongly into so many of our key markets. We know that there are more Australian businesses exporting, and we know from analysis that Australian household income is higher as a result of those trading relationships. This is all about making sure that we continue to post the record trade surpluses that we have off the back of record exports, and in doing so we create even more job opportunities for people right across Australia.
Senator Abetz, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister advise the Senate of how expanding the export market choices for our Australian farmers and businesses will assist our post-pandemic recovery?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, right through our time in government, we have sought to grow the choices for Australian farmers and businesses about who they do business with. That's why we've struck trade deals with the Republic of Korea, Japan, China, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and our Indonesia agreement that comes into force on the 5th of July. It's why, whilst we are pleased to be launching negotiations with the United Kingdom, we are also determined to conclude negotiations with the European Union, such a significant and valuable partner for us, and we look to make sure that we grow those opportunities across all of those EU nations and its population and potential consumer base for Australia of more than 400 million people. We've just completed and held our 7th round of negotiations with the EU, doing so through virtual negotiations and formats, but making sure we continue to make real progress to deliver the type of comprehensive trade agreement there that, again, can create more job opportunities for Australians and mutually beneficial outcomes for our nations.
Senator Billick.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Payne. A survey by early childhood advocates, the Front Project, has found that the government's decision to make Australian families pay unaffordable childcare fees will take food from families' tables. More than half of parents said the high cost of early learning impacts their weekly grocery budget and how much they can buy. Why is the government making parents choose between food and care during Australia's first recession in 29 years?
The Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I have not been made aware of the survey. I'm not familiar with the group that Senator Billick referred to. But, Mr President, I think it's very important to be clear here about the response that the government has worked through, which is something that's never been done before, because Australian families were indeed facing a crisis that is unprecedented. We took an important and temporary measure to help Australian families get through the crisis. We are supporting the childcare sector to keep it strong and to keep its workers employed, both of which are fundamental to any provision of any childcare at all. We also know, as those opposite have raised, that we have seen women do an even more disproportionate share of unpaid caring and domestic work, and that's an issue that we believe needs to be addressed irrespective of COVID-19. We know that working or returning to work needs access to childcare. What many service providers and sector peak bodies have told the government is that that rising demand could not be supported on what were the then business continuity payments that formed the basis of the emergency relief package. Parents were also reporting, and I have said this in the chamber before in response to other questions, that they couldn't access the level of care that they needed into the future under the relief package as it stood. But we don't believe and we don't agree with those opposite on a number of the points that they have made. Parents who are able to afford to pay for childcare, of course, will continue to be expected to do that. That is how the system works. But there are always those who, as Senator Bilyk has pointed out, who face further challenges. Those who cannot afford it because of—
Senator Payne. Senator Bilyk, supplementary question.
Thank you. One Western Australian mother told the West Australian newspaper, "My out-of-pocket expense is 3/4 of my salary. When bills come in, I often have to work out how I can feed my family or pay the rates. Why is the government bringing back fees when costs went up 7.2% in the last 12 months alone?"
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. As a government, we have put a considerable greater contribution into the childcare system in this country. Importantly, in the context of this process, we have also established a transition payment, as it is described. That was the choice between having an ongoing JobKeeper or a 25% subsistence payment to the sector. We are talking about the same amount of support in that context, but it does mean that more employees are able to be helped. And in the consultations that government had with the sector, that was seen as the better way forward. So that transition payment of 25% of childcare services fees revenue will continue to support the sector through to the 27th of September. In fact, it puts $708 million back into the sector as it moves back to the childcare subsidy system. What we have said to providers is that in order to receive the transition payment, providers will need to guarantee employment levels to protect staff as they move off JobKeeper.
The answer has expired. Senator Bilyk, final supplementary question.
Mr Morrison's childcare snapback will hurt family budgets. Mr Morrison's JobKeeper snapback will cost families their jobs. Mr Morrison's JobSeeker snapback will see them have a fraction of the support they need. Why is this government determined to hurt Australian families in September?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. Let me repeat that we have put $708 million into the sector as it moves back to the childcare subsidy system, and that is an important contribution from the Commonwealth, recognising a number of the challenges that continue in the sector. And I want to be very clear, in terms of continued additional support for families who need it, we are providing a safety net in the form of an additional childcare subsidy for families in financial difficulty. Those families can still receive free care for a maximum of up to 100 hours per fortnight. The additional childcare subsidy for families transitioning from JobSeeker back to work, easing the activity test until the 4th of October to help families whose employment has been affected. They will receive subsidised care as they return to work and study and training. So to ensure the viability of the sector, to ensure that childcare can actually be accessed, this is a very important process.
Senator Siewert.
Mr President, my question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston. Through you, President, to the Minister, is the government still intending to drop people on the JobSeeker payment back to the base rate of $40 a day at the end of September?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Thank you very much, Senator Siewert. As I have mentioned in this chamber on a number of occasions in the last few weeks, the coronavirus supplement that was made available to people who were on working age payments at the start of the coronavirus pandemic was put in place for the period of the pandemic. We made it very clear at the time that all of the measures that we put in place, not just the coronavirus supplement, but all of the measures that we put in place, were time-limited. they were timely and they were to be targeted to make sure that we were able to help as many Australians as we possibly could get from where they were at the time with the pandemic and the implications of the pandemic on the economy and on their employment prospects, to get them from there to the other side of the pandemic. We are absolutely committed to make sure that we continue to support Australians so that they can manage their lives during this pandemic. But as we've seen over recent days, we're now starting to see the economy opening up again. We're seeing restrictions able to be lifted. We're seeing jobs being created again in the marketplace. In fact, today we were pleased to report that we're starting to see the earliest of green shoots with increased job creation above the levels of job creation that we'd actually anticipated. And so today we are working our way through making sure that we can put in place all of the things that we need to do so that the economy can open up, and so those people that you refer to that are currently receiving payments through income support are able to get back into the workforce so that they can make provisions so that they can improve their well-being. So, Senator Siewert, the coronavirus supplement was time-limited, it was temporary and it was targeted.
Senator Siewert, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. I'll take that as a yes, you do intend to drop it back to $40 a day. Has the government done any modelling on the expected rate of mortgage defaults and the number of renters who will be in housing stress in October if the rate does go back to $40 a day? If not, why not? If so, what are the details, please?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And as the senator rightly points out, this has actually been one of the most unprecedented situations that any government in the world has ever had to confront. In fact, I'm sure that there hasn't been a government in the world that's had to confront this probably since the Second World War. And so, obviously, as we work our way forward to deal with all of the challenges that are before us, as we get our economy back on track and get it onto a stable footing, we'll be looking at many things. And we will continue to monitor as we see the impacts of this crisis become further aware. And so we will continue to work with the sectors, all of the sectors around Australia. The Prime Minister continues to work with his state and territory counterparts through the continuation of the National Cabinet to make sure that we're in the best possible position on the other side of the coronavirus pandemic to make sure that we can continue to support all Australians in their lives.
Senator Siewert, final
I'll take that
question.
one as a no. Minister, if the job seeker payment goes back to $40 a day at the end of at the end of September, what essential bills such as housing, power, water, food does the government suggest people don't pay?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Thank you, Senator Siewert, for your follow-up question. Clearly you haven't been listening to what we've been saying in this place, what Senator Cormann said in response to many of the questions that he's been asked this week. The most important thing that we can do is to get the economy back open again so we can get people back into work. The other thing that Senator Siewert that you failed to recognise in your original question when you refer to the $40 a day is the myriad of other supports and payments that are particularly targeted to people. For instance, anybody who has got children obviously is eligible to receive the full amount of the family tax benefit, Part A and Part B. Those people who are in rental accommodation that you refer to are obviously eligible to be in receipt of the Commonwealth rental assistance. And there are a myriad of other payments that are made available to make sure that our welfare system targets the specific needs of individuals who require the support of the federal government.
He doesn't have a question. Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston. How is the Liberal National Government expanding trade and gaining better access to markets?
Senator Patrick, props aren't allowed. Remove that immediately. Quite frankly, you're embarrassing yourself and you're demeaning Australian politics and the people who vote for you. Remove that, or I'll remove you from the chamber immediately. Remove yourself from the chamber, Senator Patrick. Senator McDonald, I'll ask you to start your question again.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston. How is the Liberal National Government expanding trade and gaining better access to markets with our major trading partners for the agricultural sector?
The Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and can I thank Senator McDonald for her question, and can I also recognise her strong interest and commitment to the regional communities of Australia and our agricultural and primary industry sectors. Senator McDonald has a very strong understanding of the importance of overseas markets to our rural and regional communities and the businesses that exist within them. It is quite an astonishing statistic, Mr President, that 70% of agricultural production, of Australia's agricultural production, is exported. So therefore, access to a diverse range of overseas markets is very important to Australia, and never more important than it is now with the economic challenges that Australia faces with the coronavirus pandemic. This government has a very strong record, Mr President, in delivering market access and opportunities to all of our Australian industries, but particularly to our farmers and fishers. And today I'm very pleased to be in the Senate with my colleague, the Minister for Trade, Minister Birmingham, on the cusp of embarking on a new free trade agreement negotiations with the United Kingdom. In the UK and in the EU, where negotiations are already underway, there is enormous opportunity to deliver ambitious and comprehensive free trade agreements, securing more favourable access for Australian products into these new markets. The government understands that it's not just about new markets for our agricultural sector, but we also need to make sure that our industries know exactly how they can best make advantage of these new markets. We don't take a set-and-forget approach. So through a series of 12 webinars, Austrade will ensure that exporters have all of the information that they need so that they can take the most advantage on the steps that they need to take advantage of their free trade agreements. And Australia's free trade agreements with trade trading partners continue to deliver huge benefits
Senator
for
Ruston.
Australia.
Senator McDonald, a supplementary question.
How will the government's prioritisation of new and better free trade agreements benefit farmers and our rural, regional and remote communities, as well as the broader Australian economy?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and thank you again to the Senator for her question, because exports are absolutely vital to the Australia's agricultural industries and our regional economies, with more than 2/3 of our production exported. So growth in Australian exports to premium markets is absolutely vital for the future of our agricultural sector, and maintaining strong relationships with our trading partners is absolutely critical to that success. Australian businesses that export, you'll be interested to know, on average hire 23% more staff. They pay 11% higher wages, and they have labour productivity 13% higher than non-exporters. These are industries that are leading Australia. And so trade is a very major contributor to our economy. It's a major creator of jobs, and it has a positive impact on our ability to be able to pay for the essential services that all Australians rely on. It is absolutely essential that we get these free trade agreements in place.
Senator McDonald, a final supplementary question.
What other measures has the government implemented to assist Australian agriculture to thrive?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. We have a range of programs that we've put in place to help Australian agriculture. I mean, just last week we implemented the new Farm Household Allowance program to make sure that we can assist our farmers to put food on the table and to help them through what has been a very crippling drought in our agricultural areas. We've also invested in rural financial counselling services so that farmers can get the advice they need when they need it, to make sure that they can make the best possible decisions to ensure their longevity and to make sure that they're able to get into the export markets that Senator Birmingham is about to open up for them. It's also very important to note that we take the mental health and well-being of our farmers very, very seriously and make sure that we have got the funds and the resources behind that. But there are a myriad of other things that the government's doing: concessional loans, taxation measures that are general, water for fodder and silage and pasture. The Australian government is committed to our farmers.
Senator Ruston. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. Last fortnight it was revealed that just 38 food boxes had been delivered under a program that was intended to provide 36,000 1,000 food boxes to older Australians. Who is responsible for this failure, and why did it go so wrong?
Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I, at the outset, reject completely the premise of the question from Senator Brown? Mr. President, this government, I think, quite wisely, made provision to support senior Australians in the case that when there were issues at the supermarkets, when there were issues with senior Australians being able to get out, to be able to access support that they might require. And so we put in place a measure, in fact a range of measures that supported senior Australians to be able to get the services that they required. In fact, Mr. President, I'm pleased that not so many people needed to have emergency food supplies provided to them. But I do know, Mr. President, that a number of the other measures that we put in place to assist senior Australians to provide food and provide meals were extremely successful. So, Mr. President, for example, the number of people receiving Meals on Wheels in some areas increased by 50%. Another of the elements that we put in place to assist senior Australians that were having problems providing food. So, Mr. President, we made provision for what we estimated might be required by senior Australians under that particular program, and Mr. President, senior Australians were freely able to apply for the food boxes. It was a demand-driven process, and the fact that we've not needed to set out that many boxes, I think, is a success of many of the other measures that we've put in place, including the extraordinarily additional support that's been provided to senior Australians through programs like Meals on Wheels, who have, as I said, in some places, had up to a 50% increase in demand and service provision.
Senator Brown, order on my left. Senator Brown is on her feet. On my right now, Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. My first supplementary question is, when did the minister first learn that the program would deliver 0.1% of the food boxes promised to older Australians? Does the minister believe that the program has been a success? And if not, what lessons has he learned?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr. President, I don't believe that making provision for something that we think might be happening or might happen during a pandemic is a failure. In fact, I think the fact that not so many people required that service is a good thing. It is a good thing. So, Mr. President, just because the provision or the estimate that we made of what the demand might be hasn't been met is a clear demonstration of the fact that the number of other services that we put in place to support senior Australians—
Senator Brown.
On relevance, I've asked a number of questions, and I would ask you to ask the minister to respond to the questions that have been asked.
Senator Cormann on the point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The minister was being directly relevant. Some of the interjections were not being directly relevant. I mean, the minister made very clear that people had the opportunity to apply for what is a demand-driven program.
I was about to points of order. I'm going to rule on the point of order. The minister is being directly relevant if he's talking about the program specifically about which he was asked. It is not appropriate for a point of order to simply ask me to instruct the minister to answer part or how to answer a question. The minister to continue. Order. Senator Watt.
Mr. President, I think it's a good thing that not that many people have required this form of assistance. But it is also a demonstration that the many other forms of assistance that we've provided to senior Australians have clearly been a success. As I said, Mr. President, in some places up to a 50% increase in the number of Meals on Wheels demand that have been provided through that service, and an extra $50 million
Senator Colbeck, time for the answer has expired. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why is this minister incapable of delivering older Australians anything more than empty slogans and unfulfilled promises?
Order on my right. Senator Colbeck.
Mr. President, I completely and utterly reject the premise of the question. We made provision for a service if people needed it. The fact is, Mr. President, that the demand hasn't been what we suggested we thought it may have been. Mr. President, and it's a good thing that people have been able to get their food without having to rely on emergency relief packages.
Pratt.
I think it's a good thing.
Senator
But it's
Brown.
also, as I've said, a demonstration of the fact that a range of measures that included additional capacity of over $50 million into Meals on Wheels has been a significant success, because Meals on Wheels provides a number of other things than just delivery of a food package might also deliver. It provides human contact. It provides a capacity to be in touch with the outside world. Mr. President, I am not at all disappointed at the fact that the demand hasn't been what we thought it may have been, and I don't regard it as a failure to make
Senator
a promise.
Colbeck,
I've regarded
time for
it as
the
a
answer
success
has
in
expired. Senator, please resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Wong. Senator Davey.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. Senator, how will building an outward-looking, open and sovereign trading economy help to strengthen the Liberal and Nationals government record delivery for Australian small and family businesses and local job creation, particularly in regional New South Wales?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Davey for the question. And Senator Davey, like all of us in the Morrison government, understands it is critical to put in place policies to support small and family businesses in Australia. Why? Because in particular when it comes to rural and regional Australia, they well and truly are the backbone of those communities. They give back to those communities, they support local jobs, they support local charities and, of course, they support the local sporting organisations. Mr. President, this support has only been made even more important because of the impacts of COVID-19, but also because of the impacts of the bushfires and because of the impacts of the drought on our economy. The government has a strong record of supporting small and family businesses across Australia, including, of course, fast-tracking tax relief for small and medium businesses, because we understand that the money that we give back to them, which was their own money, they're able to invest back into their business and grow that business and create more jobs. We've also, as you know, improved access to finance for those businesses so that they can access the money that they need, again, to grow their business and to create more jobs. We're also ensuring that small businesses are paid on time through our own government policies, leading by example, of course, but also in the implementation of the Payment Times Reporting Framework. On this side of the chamber, the government side of the chamber, we're absolutely committed to cutting red tape, obviously, and supporting small businesses with advice and disputes with the ATO and big business. And of course, in the wake of COVID-19, we have put in place targeted measures to support small businesses. Mr. President, the government's funding boost today of the Export Market Development Grant acknowledges, of course, the importance of ensuring that small businesses have the opportunity to develop their ability to get into export markets.
Thank you. Senator Davey, supplementary question.
Thank you. And can you explain how the government's skills agenda, now bolstered by the JobMaker plan, is assisting the creation of local training opportunities and skilled employees in regional and rural New South Wales?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And the government is supporting apprentices in Australia and creating local training opportunities, in particular in regional Australia. Senator Davey might remember the implementation of the Australian Apprentice Wage Subsidy, a very successful measure which of course provides wage subsidies for apprentices in areas of skill shortage, in particular in rural and regional Australia. That wage subsidy was actually opposed by those on the Labor side of politics. Quite bizarre, actually. One would have thought they would have supported a measure, in particular it was targeted at creating opportunities for small and family businesses to take on apprentices, in particular in areas of need and in rural and regional Australia. But at the time it was famously called by those on the Labor side of the chamber a political fiasco. Well, no, it it wasn't a political fiasco. It was a policy that was implemented specifically to support businesses in rural and regional Australia.
Senator Davey, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. And why is supporting small and family businesses and their apprentices critical to supporting local economies, local jobs and local economic recovery following COVID-19?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And again, the Morrison government understands you need to support small and family businesses across Australia because they are the backbone of the Australian economy. It is critical that we put in place policies that will support them through this crisis, will enable them to come out the other side, prosper, grow and ultimately create more jobs for Australians. Mr President, there's around 3.5 million small businesses in Australia. They give the dignity of work every day and they employ over 6 million Australians. And when you come from rural or regional Australia, as so many in this side of the chamber do, you acutely understand that these businesses, they are the backbone of that local economy. They are the ones that are out there supporting local jobs. They are the ones out there supporting the local charities. And of course they are the ones that you'll often see supporting the local sporting organisations. It is incredibly important that we put in place the right policies, as we are doing, to support these businesses so they can prosper, grow and create more jobs.
Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture. In 2018, Minister Littleproud said he was shocked and gutted by footage of thousands of suffering sheep being cooked alive aboard the live export ship Awasi Express. All of Australia was shocked and appalled by this unspeakable cruelty to animals, which has been going on for decades. While the government refuses to shut down live exports, they did implement a ban on live sheep exports to the Northern Hemisphere during summer months because of the excruciating suffering heat stress inflicts. Now you've made a mockery of your own rules by granting an exemption to Retwa ship scheduled to leave Fremantle today. Minister, why did the government bother instituting new rules for live exports if it had no intention of enforcing them?
The Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and thank you, Senator Faruqi, for your question. Firstly, can I say that the Australian government takes the our responsibility for animal welfare, particularly in our farming sector, very, very seriously. As you'd be aware, the decision was made by the federal court to allow the El Kuwait to load and sail. And I'd also like to point out to you that there is an independent observer aboard that ship and will sail with that voyage all the way to its destination. So the matter that you are referring to is one that we take very seriously. There are in place very, very strict rules and guidelines around the export of live animals from this country. And you rightly pointed out, and I think everybody in Australia was absolutely disgusted at the footage that we saw last year, and that is why this government has worked absolutely tirelessly with the industry, with the sector, with people who have an interest in the welfare of animals to make sure that our live export trade is done in a manner that is absolutely world's best practice. And in fact, Senator Faruqi, I think I would be correct in saying that as Australia's live export trade and our animal welfare conditions that we expect all of our farmers to undertake is seen around the rest of the world as the best practice. And through our demonstration of best practice, we like to think that we are encouraging other countries around the world to undertake best practice as well, and in doing so increase the levels of animal welfare protections that are in place for all animals around the world. But we will not destroy our Australian agricultural sector by ideological pursuit when we have put in place very, very strict provisions.
Senator Faruqi, a supplementary question.
Minister, the Department of Agriculture obviously has a glaring conflict of interest as the so-called independent regulator of an industry it actively promotes. The Moss review showed that the Department of Agriculture had failed animals and was incapable of regulating the live export industry. Will the government commit to establishing an independent Office of Animal Welfare at arm's length from the Minister and the Department of Agriculture to protect animals from cruelty and exploitation?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, I first of all refute that there is a conflict of interest, and I would absolutely endorse the processes that are in place now as a result of many reviews and much change since we saw that horrific footage a couple of years ago. And so I think that the Australian government, through the independence of the Department of Agriculture's role in being the inspector, have put in place a set of conditions that ensure that Australia's live exports are governed under the strictest, very strictest of conditions, and the fact that the LQ8 has been able to load today is a reflection that the federal court viewed the provisions that have been put in place by the Department of Agriculture as being adequate to protect the welfare of those animals on board that ship.
Senator Faruqi, a final supplementary question.
Minister, I have received thousands of emails in just the last 2 weeks from people across Australia who are angry at the way this government mistreats animals.
Order.
They want
order on my right. Order on my right. Stop the clock. Order on my right. I need to hear the question. Senator Faruqi to continue.
They want animal cruelty to end, but of course this government just does not care. Will the minister just be honest and admit once and for all that this government will prioritise profits for big business over animal welfare every single time?
Senator Ruston.
Well, first of all, I would say absolutely the Australian government does not do as you have alleged. The Australian government is absolutely committed to upholding the absolutely very high standards of animal welfare while supporting a sustainable live export trade. This is very important that we get the balance right. Animal welfare, absolute priority. Jobs for Australians, particularly rural and regional jobs for rural and regional Australia, and the economies and the regional communities that rely upon them. We saw the absolute disaster that was created when we banned, at a knee-jerk reaction, the live export from Northern Australia. And to watch those hundreds of thousands of cattle die of starvation because an industry got stopped in its tracks was probably far crueler than anything that you could ever imagine, Senator Faruqi. So maybe think about what you're saying, because right now we are absolutely committed to the highest level of animal welfare, and we will continue to be so whilst providing
Order, Senator
jobs.
Ruston. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne. In what has been described as a, and I quote, rare public speech, end quote, last night at the ANU, the Foreign Minister finally acknowledged the issue of foreign state-backed disinformation in Australia.
Order.
The risks of foreign state-backed disinformation have been known for many years, given, for example, the occurrences in Crimea in 2014, the US in 2016 and Hong Kong last year. Can the Minister explain why it has taken the government until now to finally act?
The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne.
I must be having hearing difficulties today, Mr President. Comes with age, I'm sure, but let me start at the beginning. I'd be very happy to send Senator Wong the collected works so that she had ready access to a vast range of remarks. And in fact, Senator, I'll have it dropped down to the chamber for you any time, and in fact I'll even table it if that would assist you with your consideration. I think what the Australian government has clearly set out, and indeed what the Prime Minister talked about at the Lowy Institute, was prosecuting a case for our national interests, and that includes through multilateral institutions. As you know, the Prime Minister instituted the multilateral audit and asked my Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to carry out that audit. Part of that process has meant examining over 100 multilateral institutions, processes and fora, and that has underpinned everything we have done. What the audit findings have shown us is the value of focusing on our national interest and ensuring that in doing so we work within the appropriate systems to achieve outcomes for Australia in our national interest, which should always be the premise upon which—
Order. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr President. Direct relevance. The question is about foreign state-backed disinformation, and my question was why the government has taken until now to act, given the examples we've seen internationally.
I've allowed you to restate the question. I'm listening carefully to the minister's answer. She has 47 seconds remaining. Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And I was responding, I thought, directly to a number of the observations that Senator Wong made in her question. But specifically, if she wishes, in relation to the question of disinformation, what the government has made clear is the threat that disinformation, no matter who perpetrates it, places or presents to the orderly provision of information in communities, particularly in the context of a pandemic. And the critical impact that we have seen in a number of countries that has drawn together the European Union, that has drawn together 131 countries in a motion drafted by Latvia on the infodemic, is absolutely symbolic of those concerns and of our concerns in relation to that impact.
Senator Wong, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. The Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters said in 2016 it was essential this issue of foreign state-backed disinformation be considered as part of Australian elections. So I again ask, after 4 years of thinking about it, beyond the headlines, what is the Morrison government now actually doing to protect Australian elections from foreign state-backed disinformation?
Senator Payne.
Mr President, I would remind the senator and those opposite of the passing of the Countering Foreign Interference legislation, which is absolutely apposite in this case, absolutely apposite to the sorts of issues that the senator is raising. So, in the midst of the pandemic and in the midst of the crisis that we and millions of people around the world have been dealing with, we are absolutely focused on the importance of shining a light on disinformation because it is the most effective antidote.
Senator Wong, final supplementary question.
Thank you. In last night's speech, the Foreign Minister also finally rebuked Mr Morrison's infamous negative globalism speech of last October. Given the internal opponents of multilateralism within the coalition include Minister Dutton, who says, and I quote, "There are other bodies within the UN that aren't acting certainly in the interests of Australia," how will this minister persuade her colleagues that multilateralism is a key Australian national interest?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And I absolutely and fundamentally reject the premise of Senator Wong's question. Absolutely and fundamentally. And as I was trying to say in my response to her first question, very, very clearly when the Prime Minister talked at the Lowy Institute, he talked about prosecuting a case for our national interests, including through multilateral institutions. He instituted the multilateral audit. He asked the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to carry it out, and that audit has been absolutely comprehensive. And what it shows us is that Australia has a very important role to play in shaping the values and the norms within multilateral institutions themselves. And we're talking about institutions that are extremely important to Australia, Mr President, in terms of advancing our national interests, promoting and protecting our values, whether they are underpinning the global rules and norms that ensure a level playing field, whether they're regulating international cooperation in areas like aviation, in telecommunications, in maritime transport, in intellectual property and a range of others.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Defence, Senator Reynolds. Can the minister outline how the Morrison government is building an outward-looking and globally competitive defence industry here in Australia?
The Minister for Defence, Senator Reynolds.
Mr President, and thank you, Senator Henderson, for the question and for your unrelenting support for Australian defence industry. Look, the Morrison government is fully committed to delivering a globally competitive Australian defence industry, a defence industry that delivers three sovereign outcomes for our nation. Firstly, to meet our contemporary defence needs. Secondly, to create thousands of multi-generational jobs right here in Australia. And thirdly, to achieve greater export success. We are providing unprecedented opportunities for Australian industry to participate in defence work. We are very purposely and very deliberatively maximising opportunities for Australian industry involvement in defence programs. As our companies bid for work, they are now required to submit Australian industry capability plans detailing how they will maximise opportunities for Australian businesses. We absolutely hold these companies to account on their contracted commitments through enforceable deliverables. And we're now also developing an independent Australian capability audit program to validate delivery of this contracted commitment. At the heart of our industry policy is a commitment to support the global competitiveness of Australia's defence industry, as seen in our defence export strategy. And to that end, this government has committed $20 million per year to support Australia's defence industry achieve greater export success. We've established the Australian Defence Export Office and a grants program. We've appointed a defence export advocate. We've released the fourth and largest defence sales catalogue this year. And finally, we have also invested $1.3 billion to support Australian technical innovation in defence industry.
Senator Henderson, a supplementary question.
Can the minister outline how this government's defence industry policies are creating opportunities for Australian companies and workers, both here and overseas?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr President, and I certainly can, Senator Henderson. The Morrison government's $200 billion investment in defence capability provides unprecedented opportunities for Australian companies. And let me tell everybody in this chamber, they are embracing these opportunities in record numbers. Thanks to the policies of those on this side of the chamber, global defence companies are establishing uniquely Australian entities that are today employing thousands and thousands of Australians and are exporting Australian-built cutting-edge capability to the world. I'm so proud of companies like Thales Australia, of French origin, is now employing almost 4,000 Australians. And they are now delivering for Australia and also now exporting high-technology products for defence, including the Bendigo-built Bushmasters. Another wonderful example are the 50 Australian companies, such as Chemring Australia, just outside of Geelong, who are now exporting over $1.7 billion of export.
Has expired. Senator Henderson, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister outline how these policies are setting the foundations to build the attack-class submarine here in Australia?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And again, thank you for the question. And let me be very clear. The attack-class submarine is on time and it is on budget, Senator Sterle. In the current preliminary design phase, we are starting to select many of the systems and also the future suppliers. As Naval Group Australia approaches industry, it is a mandatory requirement for Australian industry plans to be developed as they approach the Australian market. This will ensure that we are maximising Australian industry content, a minimum of 60%. To ensure we are developing our knowledge base, our sovereign knowledge base, we already have over 100 Australians working in Cherbourg in France, which includes 20 of Naval Group Australia's 200 employees. As this project ramps up, I am absolutely confident Naval Group Australia will succeed in ensuring its presence in Australia generates thousands of multi-generational jobs and, in time, more defence exports.
Senator Reynolds. Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Cybersecurity and the Arts, Senator Reynolds. On Monday, the minister said in relation to male speed standards, and I quote, "There have been no changes, no changes, no changes, no changes." I refer to the media release issued by the Minister for Finance and the Minister for Communications, Cybersecurity and the Arts on the 21st of April 2020, which said the following: required delivery time for regular intrastate letters will be extended to 5 days after the day of posting. Who was right, the minister or the media release?
The Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Cyber Safety and the Arts, Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I stand by my statement in this chamber earlier.
Senator O'Neill, a supplementary question.
So you were right. Means no changes, no changes, no changes. Last night, Senator Hanson said of Australia Post workers—
Order. Senator O'Neill. Senator O'Neill, please continue.
Last night, Senator Hanson said of Australia Post workers, and I quote, "There will be no redundancy offered to these workers. Can the minister guarantee there will be no reduction in Australia Post's workforce?
Senator Reynolds.
As I said previously, as I believe I said previously in this chamber, there will be no forced redundancies of their posties, and that remains correct.
Senator O'Neill, a final supplementary question.
It's been reported that Australia Post has hired James Hardie's former spin doctor. Why does the government need expensive PR advice when it's clearly capable of running misleading arguments without assistance?
Order. Senator Reynolds. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, and I would remind the senator that Australia Post day-to-day operations are the responsibility of its board and management, and not of government.
Senator Cormann.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that further questions be placed on a notice paper, and I also seek leave to add to an answer I provided to a question by Senator Watt yesterday.